The encounter, the evening sky was painted in shades of purple and gold as Jason walked through the old, abandoned part of the city. It was a quiet place, one that the locals had long forgotten. The streets were empty, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and overgrown plants. It was the perfect place to escape from the noise of the world. Jason had been walking for what seemed like hours, but something had been bothering him ever since he entered the forgotten district. A strange feeling, like he was being watched, had crept up his spine. His footsteps echoed against the crumbling buildings, and his breath came out in short bursts. It was unusual for someone to be out here at this hour, especially someone like him. But today, Jason needed solitude. He needed to think, to clear his mind. As he walked past an old warehouse, something caught his attention. A faint sound, a soft whimper, almost like the cry of an animal. Jason froze. Curiosity tugged at him. The sound came from inside the warehouse. He approached cautiously, his eyes scanning the darkened windows. There was no sign of life, no other movement, no shadows, only silence, but that sound. It was unmistakable. Jason's heart raced as he pushed open the rusty door. Inside, the dim light from the setting sun barely illuminated the room. It was dusty and filled with old furniture, forgotten relics of a time long past. And then he saw her. A small alien girl was trapped in a cage. Her pale blue skin shimmered under the faint light, and her large, expressive eyes looked up at him with a mixture of fear and hope. She was beautiful, unlike anything Jason had ever seen. Her features were delicate, her ears long and pointed, and her hair white as snow fell around her shoulders in soft waves. She was so tiny, barely more than a child. Jason took a step forward, his breath catching in his throat. Who are you? His voice was barely a whisper. The alien girl flinched, as if she wasn't used to hearing human voices. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. She only stared at him, her gaze pleading. Jason's heart ached as he looked at her. He could see the fear in her eyes, the desperation. It was clear she wasn't from this world, but who would imprison someone so fragile? He felt a surge of anger, but he didn't know where it was coming from. "Why are you here?" he asked again, his voice a little stronger this time. "Why are you in this cage?" The girl took a deep breath, and for a moment, Jason thought she might speak. But then she just shook her head, her lips trembling. She couldn't answer, or maybe she was too afraid to. Jason couldn't understand it. How had she ended up here? Who had locked her away? The silence between them stretched on, and Jason couldn't tear his eyes away from her. There was something in her gaze, something that tugged at him. It was as if she was trying to tell him something important, but he couldn't understand. Without thinking, he reached out toward the cage, his hand shaking slightly. The girl didn't move, but her eyes followed his every move. As his fingers touched the cold metal bars, a sudden realization struck him. He had to get her out. She couldn't stay here, locked away like this. He turned and scanned the room for something to unlock the cage. His heart raced as he saw an old, rusty key hanging from a hook on the wall. He moved quickly, grabbing the key and rushing back to the cage. He didn't know why he was doing this. He didn't know who this girl was or why he felt so compelled to help her. But he couldn't just leave her here. Jason inserted the key into the lock and turned it. The cage door creaked open with a groan, and the girl slowly stood up, her tiny frame trembling. She stepped out of the cage, but she didn't run. Instead, she stayed in front of him, looking up at him with those wide, innocent eyes. For a moment, neither of them said anything. The air between them was thick with tension. Jason didn't know what to do next. Should he ask her more questions? Should he take her somewhere safe? The girl finally spoke, her voice barely audible. "Thank you," she whispered, her words carrying an almost otherworldly tone. She didn't seem scared anymore. She seemed relieved. Jason looked at her in disbelief. He started, but she cut him off. "I need your help," she said, her voice growing stronger. "I need to be free. Can you help me?" The question hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Jason looked at her, unsure of what she meant. What kind of help did she need? Was she asking him to protect her, to hide her from someone? Or was there something more to her words than he realized? He took a step back, trying to gather his thoughts. "I'll help you," he said, his voice steady. "But you need to tell me what's going on. Who did this to you? Why were you locked up?" The girl hesitated, her eyes flickering with uncertainty. "I can't explain everything," she said softly, "but I can offer you something in return. One night of freedom." Her words were slow, measured, as if she was choosing them carefully. Jason's heart skipped a beat. One night, what did that mean? What was she offering? But before he could ask, the girl turned away, her delicate figure disappearing into the shadows. Jason stood there, frozen, wondering what he had just gotten himself into. One night, what could that possibly mean? As he stood in the dimly lit warehouse, Jason realized that his life was about to change forever. The plea for freedom. Jason stood in the warehouse, staring at the spot where the alien girl had disappeared into the shadows. His mind raced, still trying to process what had just happened. He had released her, yes, but there was so much he didn't understand. One night, what could she mean by that? And why had she looked at him like that, with such deep desperation? Minutes passed before Jason finally moved, his legs feeling like they were made of stone. He knew he couldn't leave her, not like this. There was something about her, something that drew him in. Maybe it was her eyes, so full of fear and hope, or maybe it was just the way she had pleaded for freedom. Either way, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made a decision that would change everything. He stepped out of the warehouse and into the cool night air. His senses heightened. The streetlights flickered above him as he scanned the darkened alleyways, his heart thumping in his chest. Where had she gone? He didn't have to search long. A figure appeared in the distance, barely visible in the dim light, but Jason knew it was her, the alien girl. She was standing in the middle of the street, her head tilted slightly as if she was waiting for him. Jason approached slowly, unsure of what to say. The last time they spoke, she had only offered him one night in return for her freedom, and now it seemed like she had something more to say. "Are you all right?" Jason asked as he drew closer. The girl didn't look at him immediately. Her eyes were fixed on the ground, as if she was lost in thought. Her long, silver blue hair shimmered in the moonlight, the soft strands moving slightly in the wind. She looked fragile, vulnerable, but there was something powerful about her presence. Even in the stillness of the night, she commanded attention. "I'm free now," she whispered finally, her voice trembling slightly. "But there's a price for everything." Jason frowned, confused. "What do you mean? What price?" The girl looked up at him then, her large alien eyes meeting his with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. "You don't understand," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I wasn't just locked up for no reason. My people, my enemies are looking for me. And now that I'm free, they'll stop at nothing to find me again. You have to help me." Jason's heart skipped a beat. Enemies? What kind of enemies could she have? And why was she looking to him for help? "I don't know what I can do," Jason replied, his voice unsure. "I'm just a guy. I don't know anything about whatever this is." The girl shook her head, her expression serious. "You don't have to know everything, but you have to protect me. They'll come for me, and when they do, they won't stop until they have me back. I need your help to stay free." Jason felt the weight of her words pressing down on him. There was something in her voice, something that told him she wasn't lying. She was scared, yes, but she wasn't helpless. The alien girl knew exactly what she was asking for. "But why me?" Jason asked. "Why are you asking me? I don't know anything about this world you're from or your enemies. I'm just a guy who happened to find you." The girl's eyes softened for a moment, and Jason could almost feel her pain. "Because you're the only one who doesn't want to control me," she said quietly. "You saw me as something more than a prisoner. You freed me when no one else would, and that means something." Jason didn't know how to respond to that. He wasn't a hero, wasn't someone who could fight alien enemies or save anyone from an intergalactic war. But as he looked at her, he realized that he couldn't walk away. He couldn't leave her alone to face whatever threat was coming. Something inside him told him that this was bigger than just one night. It was about more than just a plea for freedom. It was about saving someone who needed help. "You're not alone," Jason said, his voice steady now. "I'll help you. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll help you." The girl's eyes brightened, her fear momentarily replaced by a glimmer of hope. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I promise I'll repay you. One night of freedom in exchange for everything." Jason still didn't fully understand what she meant by that, but he didn't ask. Maybe he would understand in time. For now, he had one goal: keep her safe. "Where do we go now?" Jason asked. The girl took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the darkened street around them. "We need to move quickly," she said. "They'll be looking for me soon, and when they do, nothing will stop them." Jason nodded. He had no idea what he was about to get involved in, but there was no turning back now. He wasn't just going to stand by and let her face this alone. He didn't know what would happen next. But one thing was certain: his life had just changed forever. The Dill Jason and the alien girl, who had introduced herself as Lyra, walked through the streets, the tension between them growing with every passing moment. The night felt colder than it should have been, and Jason couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. His instincts were on high alert, but Lyra didn't seem to be worried. She moved with a sense of purpose, her gaze constantly darting around as if expecting something or someone to appear at any moment. Jason couldn't help but wonder what kind of enemies she had, and why they would go so far to capture her. Who were these people? What did they want with her? He had so many questions, but every time he tried to ask her, Lyra would go silent, her expression distant, as if reliving something painful. They reached a narrow alleyway, its entrance hidden from the street by tall buildings on either side. Lyra stopped, glancing behind her one last time before turning to face Jason. "This is where we'll hide for now," she said quietly, her voice strained. "We need to wait until the danger passes." Jason looked around. The alleyway was dark, and the shadows seemed to close in around them. It wasn't much of a hiding place, but it was all they had for now. Lyra stepped forward, her delicate fingers brushing against the rough brick wall. She turned back to Jason, her eyes reflecting both determination and fear. "You need to understand something," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm not just running from them. I'm running from my own people." Jason blinked, unsure if he heard her correctly. "Your people? What do you mean?" Lyra's eyes dropped to the ground, her expression filled with sorrow. "I was supposed to be their leader. My family ruled my world. But she paused, struggling to find the right words. I didn't fit into their plans. I was too weak, too different. So they imprisoned me, locked me away, and cast me aside." Jason felt his heart twist. He had known she was in trouble, but he didn't realize it was so deep. "That's terrible," he said softly. "But why would they lock you up like that? If you're supposed to be their leader, why they thought I was a threat?" she interrupted, her voice sharp now. "Because I didn't agree with their ways. I wanted peace, not war. I wanted to save my people, not destroy them. But they didn't see it that way. They saw me as weak, and that's why they locked me away." Jason didn't know what to say. He had always thought of aliens as something out of science fiction, something to be feared or admired. But now, looking at Lyra, he realized she was more than just an alien. She was someone who had been torn apart by her own world's expectations. Someone who had been cast aside by those who should have cared for her. "Is that why you need my help?" Jason asked. "You need to hide from them." Lyra nodded, her eyes haunted. "I can't go back. If I do, they'll either kill me or force me to become something I'm not. But I can't fight them alone. I need your help to stay hidden until I can figure out a way to stop them." Jason's mind raced. He didn't know what he was getting into, but the desperation in her voice was enough to convince him. "Okay," he said, swallowing hard. "I'll help you, but you have to promise me something." Lyra raised an eyebrow, her gaze flickering with curiosity. "What? You have to tell me what's really going on," Jason said, his voice steady but firm. "I can't help you if I don't understand what we're up against." Lyra hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I understand, but there's something I need to tell you first." She stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "One night, that's all I can offer you. One night of freedom, no strings attached. That's the price for helping me." Jason frowned. "What do you mean, one night? What does that even mean?" Lyra's eyes were filled with a mix of sadness and determination. "It's a pact. My people, my enemies, they have a way of controlling me, of making me do things I don't want to do. But if you help me, I can offer you one night where I'm truly free. No obligations, no games, just one night where I can be myself without the weight of my world on my shoulders." Jason's heart raced. This was starting to feel like more than just a simple rescue mission. Lyra was asking for something deeper, something personal. But what did she mean by one night? Was it a promise of something more, or was she offering something he couldn't understand? "What happens after that night?" Jason asked, his voice thick with uncertainty. "Do you just leave?" Lyra's face softened, and for the first time, she seemed vulnerable. "After that night, you'll be free to choose. If you want to leave, you can. If you want to keep helping me, then I'll take you with me. But after that, we'll both have to face what's coming." Jason was silent for a long moment. He had no idea what was ahead, but something about Lyra's offer felt genuine. She wasn't asking for him to risk everything for her. She was offering him a choice, something rare and valuable in a world that often demanded sacrifice. "I'll help you," Jason said finally. "I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll help you." Lyra's eyes softened with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't know how much this means to me." As she spoke, Jason felt a deep sense of responsibility settle in his chest. He had no idea what he was getting into, but one thing was certain: he wasn't going to turn his back on her now. The night was far from over, and whatever came next, Jason knew it was going to change his life forever. The alien's secret. The hours drifted by slowly as Jason and Lyra remained hidden in the dark alleyway. The sound of distant traffic and the occasional footstep echoed in the night, but the street around them remained eerily quiet. Lyra hadn't said much more since their conversation about the one night she could offer him. Jason couldn't stop thinking about it, about the weight of her words. One night, what did she mean by that? And what kind of power did she have to make such an offer? He glanced over at her. She was sitting on a ledge, her small figure wrapped in an old, tattered cloak. Her pale blue skin, now under the dim streetlights, looked almost glowing, and her long silver hair framed her face. Despite the fear and desperation in her eyes earlier, she now looked calm, as if she were waiting for something, waiting for him, maybe. Jason took a deep breath. He couldn't help but feel a deep connection to her, something he couldn't explain. She wasn't just an alien. She was a person, someone with a past, with dreams, with pain. He had to understand more about who she was, about the danger she was in, and why she had asked for his help. "Lyra," Jason said, breaking the silence. "You said you were supposed to be a leader, right? What happened? Why aren't you still with your people?" She looked up at him, her eyes filled with sadness, but she didn't answer immediately. Instead, she gazed at the stars above, as if searching for answers in the night sky. Finally, she spoke, her voice softer than before. "I was born into a family of power," she began. "A family that ruled my world, until I became a threat to their control." Her eyes flickered with a hint of pain. "I believed in peace, in a world where everyone was treated equally, where no one was left behind. But my people, my leaders, didn't want that. They wanted power. They wanted to dominate other worlds, to conquer, to force their will on others." Jason frowned, not sure where this was leading. "But you didn't agree with that?" Lyra nodded slowly. "I couldn't. I saw the suffering of my people, the destruction that was caused by their desire for conquest. I couldn't stand by and watch it happen. So, I spoke out. I tried to change things, to bring peace." Her voice trembled slightly. "But peace wasn't what they wanted. They saw me as weak, as a threat to their power. And so they locked me away, hidden from the world, forgotten." Jason's heart ached as he listened to her. He had no idea that the situation was so dire, that her struggle was about something so much bigger than he had realized. "They locked you up because you wanted peace." "Yes," Lyra replied quietly. "They thought I would disrupt their plans, that I would turn the people against them. So they took me, kept me imprisoned, out of sight. They didn't want anyone to see that I existed, that there was another way." Jason couldn't understand it. How could anyone lock up their own leader just for wanting peace? It didn't make sense. But the more he listened to Lyra, the more he understood that her world was nothing like his. Power, control, and war were the foundation of her society. Peace was a concept foreign to them, a dream too dangerous to pursue. And now they're after you again. Jason asked, his voice Lo, Lyra nodded. Yes, the leaders of my world have sent their best warriors, their hunters, to find me. They'll stop at nothing to bring me back. But if they do, they'll force me to become what I once was, someone who stands by and watches as my people destroy everything. I can't let that happen. Jason's mind was spinning. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. An entire world filled with power-hungry leaders bent on conquest. And she had been the one to stand up against them, too. Speak for peace. No wonder they had locked her away. She was a threat to everything they stood for. So, what happens now? Jason asked, his voice steady despite the storm of questions in his head. I need to find a way to stop them, Lyra replied. But I can't do it alone, and that's where you come in. Jason raised an eyebrow. Me, I'm just a guy. What could I possibly do to help? Lyra met his gaze, her eyes intense. You don't understand, Jason. You're the one who freed me. You're the one who saw me as something more than a prisoner. That means something. You have the power to help me in ways you don't even realize yet. Jason wasn't sure what she meant by that. He hadn't done anything special. He had just helped her because it felt like the right thing to do. But now, she was asking him to do more, to fight against enemies he didn't understand, to stand with her in a war that wasn't his. The weight of her words pressed down on him, but he couldn't back out now. What do I need to do? Jason asked, his voice firm. Lyra smiled softly, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. I need your help to get to my ship. Once I'm there, I can contact the people who can help us. But first, we need to stay hidden, and we need to keep moving. They'll be looking for us soon. Jason nodded, determination settling in his chest. He didn't know what was ahead, but he couldn't leave Lyra to face it alone. Let's go. Then, I'll do whatever it takes. Lyra's eyes softened, her expression filled with gratitude. Thank you, Jason. You don't know what this means to me. As they began to move through the shadows, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to be thrust into something far bigger than anything he had ever imagined. But he had made his choice. He wasn't going to leave her. Not now, not ever. They had a long road ahead, and the dangers that awaited them were just beginning. The night felt colder as Jason and Lyra moved through the dark streets, blending into the shadows as best as they could. Every step they took was measured, quiet, the weight of their surroundings pressing in on them. Lyra was silent. Beside him, her eyes scanning the streets constantly, as if she could feel the danger even before it arrived. Jason couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. Every rustling leaf, every distant footstep made his heart race a little faster. They reached an old, abandoned train station on the outskirts of the city. The rusted tracks stretched out in the dark, and the empty platforms echoed in the night. This place, like so many others, had been forgotten. A perfect hiding place. But even as they moved closer to the station, the sense of unease only grew stronger. They're coming, Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible. Her face was tense, her eyes darting around. They'll be here soon. We have to move faster. Jason's pulse quickened. He didn't know who they were, but he could feel the urgency in her voice. She wasn't just scared, she was terrified, and that terrified him even more. Who's coming? Jason asked, trying to keep his voice steady, though the fear was rising in his chest. Who are these people? Lyra stopped in her tracks, turning to face him. Her eyes were wide, filled with a mix of fear and something else, something darker. Hunters, my world's warriors. The ones who track and capture anyone who threatens the power of the ruling family. They've been hunting me for years. Jason's mind raced. He had no idea that she was dealing with something this intense. He had thought they were just trying to lay low until the danger passed, but this was different. She wasn't just running from one person. She was running from an entire force. "We can't stay here," Lyra said, her voice firm now. "We need to keep moving." Jason nodded, but as they turned to leave, a sharp sound rang out in the distance footsteps, growing louder, faster. Jason's heart skipped a beat. "They're already here," Lyra muttered, her eyes scanning the darkened street. "We have to go now." Without waiting for Jason to respond, she grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the platform. Jason didn't have time to think. He followed her without question, his legs moving on their own as they sprinted toward the old, abandoned trains. But the sound of footsteps wasn't the only thing Jason could hear now. There were voices, too, faint but growing louder by the second. "Stop right there," a voice shouted in the distance. It was harsh, commanding. Jason's breath caught in his throat. They had been spotted. "Run," Lyra urged, pulling him faster. They reached the platform and dashed behind an old train car, hiding in the shadow of its rusted frame. Jason's heart was pounding in his chest. He could hear the hunters getting closer, the sound of their boots echoing on the metal tracks. The adrenaline was pumping through his veins, but he knew they weren't safe yet. The hunters were skilled. They would search every inch of this place until they found them. Jason peeked out from behind the train car. In the dim light, he could make out 3 figures approaching. They were dressed in black, their movements fluid and precise, like predators hunting prey. Lyra's grip tightened on his arm, her body tense beside him. "They'll find us if we stay here," she whispered urgently. "We have to keep moving, but we can't outrun them on foot. We need a vehicle." Jason's mind raced. A vehicle. They were in the middle of nowhere, and he hadn't seen anything that resembled a getaway. "Car, what about the trains?" Jason suggested. "We can hide on one of them." Lyra shook her head. "The trains are too slow. We need something faster." Before Jason could respond, Lyra's head snapped to the side, her eyes narrowing. She motioned for him to stay silent, and they crouched low to the ground, holding their breath. The hunters were getting closer, and their voices were now clear. "She couldn't have gone far," one of the hunters said. "Search the area. She's here." Jason's stomach dropped. They were closing in. If they didn't move soon, they would be trapped. He looked around frantically, his eyes scanning the darkened station. Then he saw an old, beat-up motorcycle, leaning against a nearby wall, half hidden in the shadows. It wasn't much, but it would be fast enough. "This way," Jason whispered, tugging at Lyra's sleeve. "We need to get to that bike." She hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. They didn't have a choice. They had to move, and they had to move now. They bolted across the platform, low to the ground, until they reached the motorcycle. Jason didn't waste any time. He jumped onto the seat and quickly started the engine. The motorcycle roared too. Life, the sound cutting through the quiet night like a scream. "Get on," Jason shouted over the noise. Lyra didn't hesitate. She jumped on behind him, her arms wrapping tightly around his waist. Jason didn't look back. He slammed the throttle down, and the bike shot forward, tearing down the old tracks and into the night. Behind them, Jason could hear the hunters shouting, their voices full of rage. They were chasing them, but the motorcycle was fast. Jason weaved through the narrow streets dodging obstacles and speeding past dark alleys. The wind whipped against his face, and he could hear Lyra's breath against his back, fast and frantic. But despite the speed, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't safe. The hunters wouldn't give up. They wouldn't stop until they had her back. "Where are we going?" Jason shouted over his shoulder. Lyra's voice was tight with urgency. "To the docks. There's a ship waiting for me there. It's the only way I can escape." Jason nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know what would happen when they reached the docks, but one thing was clear. Lyra wasn't just running from her past. She was running from everything she had ever known, and Jason had just become part of that fight. The betrayal. The wind howled through the night as Jason and Lyra sped down the winding streets, the motorcycle roaring beneath them. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating only fleeting glimpses of abandoned buildings and empty alleyways. But despite the speed, despite the freedom of the open road, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, and every instinct told him that danger was closing in. They had been riding for what felt like an eternity when Lyra suddenly tugged on his shirt. "There," she shouted, pointing ahead. Jason squinted through the dark, spotting the distant glow of lights by the docks. The dockyards loomed like a ghostly fortress, tall warehouses lining the shore, with shadows dancing across the water. He pushed the bike harder, the engine growling as they approached their destination. But as they neared the docks, something caught his eye. A figure standing by one of the warehouses. Jason's heart skipped a beat. The silhouette was tall and menacing, with a long coat billowing in the breeze. He had seen the way Lyra tensed when she saw the figure. Something in her expression changed. Fear, but also something else. Recognition. "Who is that?" Jason asked, his voice low. Lyra's grip tightened on his waist, her breath shaky. "It's him," she whispered. "The one who betrayed me." Jason's mind raced. "What do you mean? What's going on?" Before Lyra could answer, the figure stepped forward, revealing his face in the dim light. Jason felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The man's features were sharp, cold, and calculating. His eyes, dark as night, locked onto Lyra, a smirk playing at the corners of his lips. Jason knew immediately that this was no ordinary enemy. This was someone she knew, someone she had trusted. "You've made quite a mess of things, Lyra," the man's voice rang out, deep and venomous. Jason's pulse quickened. "Who are you?" he demanded, trying to keep his voice steady. The man ignored Jason, his attention fixed solely on Lyra. "Did you think you could run forever?" he asked with a mocking laugh. "You were never meant to be free, and now you've dragged an innocent into your mess." Lyra stiffened. "Zareth," she whispered. The name sounded like a curse on her lips. Jason glanced over at her. "Zareth." "He was my closest ally," Lyra said through gritted teeth. "Or at least, I thought he was. He betrayed me when I tried to break free. He was part of my family's inner circle, but when I started to speak out, he just sold me out to save his own skin." Zareth's smirk widened, and he stepped closer, his eyes glinting with cold amusement. "You really think they'll let you escape, Lyra? You've made a fool of yourself. And now you've made a fool of him, too." He motioned toward Jason, who was still gripping the motorcycle's handlebars tightly. Jason's mind spun. The betrayal was more complicated than he had thought. Lyra hadn't just been running from enemies. She had been running from someone she trusted, someone who had known the depths of her secrets. And now, this man, Zareth, had come to finish what he started. "You didn't think I wouldn't follow you, did you?" Zaroth continued, his voice mocking. I always knew where you would go, but you were too naive to see the truth. You think you can outsmart me. Lyra's face darkened, her eyes burning with a mix of anger and disbelief. You were never my ally. You always wanted to control me, to bend me to your will. I knew you were dangerous, Zaroth, but I never thought you'd go this far. Zaroth chuckled, taking a step closer, his eyes gleaming with malice. You never understood the power you had. But that's fine. It makes it all the more satisfying to watch you crumble. Jason felt a knot tighten in his chest. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was personal. Lyra had trusted this man, and he had used that trust to turn against her. And now, Zaroth wasn't just an enemy to Lyra, he was an enemy to Jason too. Leave her alone, Jason said, stepping forward. She's done nothing wrong. Whatever this is about, it doesn't have to end like this. Zaroth laughed again, the sound cold and sinister. You don't get it, do you? She's always been my target. You're just the fool who walked into the trap. Before Jason could respond, Zaroth made a quick movement, pulling something from his coat sleek, metallic device that he pointed directly at Lyra. Jason's heart stopped. He recognized the weapon. It was a neural disruptor, a device capable of stunning and paralyzing its target. No, Jason shouted, lunging toward Zaroth, but it was too late. A sharp, blinding light shot from the device, hitting Lyra square in the chest. She gasped, her body jerking with the impact. For a moment, she seemed frozen in place, her eyes wide with shock and pain. Jason reached out to catch her, but she collapsed into his arms, her body limp. No, Jason screamed again, his voice breaking as he knelt down with her. Lyra, no. Zaroth stood over them, a cruel smile on his face. You see, she was never meant to escape. And you, he turned his gaze to Jason, his expression full of disdain. You were just the pawn in this game. Jason's heart pounded in his chest, panic rising. Lyra was slipping away, her breathing shallow, her eyes fluttering. The weapon had taken its toll, and there was no time to waste. Get up, Zaroth shouted, his voice growing harsh. You're in my way now. You don't know what you've gotten into. Jason's hands shook as he held Lyra, his mind racing. He had to do something, anything to save her. But Zaroth wasn't going to let them escape. Not this time. His eyes narrowed. He wouldn't let this betrayal stand. Not for Lyra, not for anyone. With a surge of adrenaline, Jason picked Lyra up, ignoring the pain in his arms. He wasn't going to let Zaroth win, not now, and he was ready to make a choice.